from California, this is Sandy from Messy Paper Crafts, and today I have a tutorial for you on how to create all of those cards with paper pads and how to add some interest to it with foiling or some metallic paper and some golden elements. And the idea came to me when I did the unboxing video, because the paper that I'm using here is a recent release by Ciao Bella and is called Indigo. And as you can see, there were all of those beautiful images with a hummingbird, dragonflies and peacocks and so on, and a really great tonality with blue and gold. And I thought, how fun would that be if the gold would be not just printed, but if there were some kind of foiled elements to it. So that's why I thought, I learned this technique from Tim Holtz a while ago, how he was basically using the Heidi Swap Mink machine a little bit in a different way. And I thought I will try to foil some of the scrapbooking paper and then also maybe some craft paper. And I was using a variation of stamps and then also some stencils. And I also even tried some embossing folders just to see how that would work all together for some fun mixed media style. But of course you can also just keep it simple, just with one layer, or you can just build up layer on layer with lots of different ephemera, and maybe you have some golden embellishments. So let's get into it and have fun. Indigo by Ciao Bella. So first a quick overview of this paper, which is the 6x6 fussy cutting pad. And that's quite cool that it's not just for fussy cutting, but it also has a lot of great backgrounds. And I'm just looking here for something that's a bit darker, so that my golden foil will hopefully stand out on. And the 6x6 is really convenient because, as you can see on the left side, there is the Mink machine, which is by Heidi Swap, and that's what I'm using for the foiling. And this is a toner activated laminating machine. So it's a smaller size, so if you're into scrapbooking, then you would need the 12x12 size. I have the smaller one because I'm mostly just doing cards, so for me that's perfect. However, that also means that I'm limited in what I can use, and usually I have to use 12x12 paper and then I have to cut it into a smaller size. Hence why these 6x6 sheets are perfect. Preparing for foiling. So this is actually easier than I thought, because I always thought the Mink machine is super complicated, but it's not. And here you just see all of those different stamps that I want to use, and any stamp will really work for this unless it's a really blocky image. So I kind of preferred stamps that had more intricate detail, because then it also didn't really matter then if the foiling came out perfect or not. So you want to take some stamps where the outcome doesn't really have to be precise. And that's why I love here this stamp that you might have seen from my last video, where I did the Durala and alcohol ink. And I really love this stamp. It has this great dragonfly and is fitting for this indigo paper because it's from the same line. It's also by Ciao Bella and it's called Fly Through Time. And here I'm using now the toner, and that's actually toner by Heidi Swap for the Mink machine. Usually it comes in a bigger bottle and has a big opening. So I just filled this into this little plastic bottle. I think I found this in Hobby Lobby, but I'm sure that you can also find this on Amazon or anywhere else, just so that I can have a more precise pouring of this ink, because I don't want too much. And with this brayer, that's a dedicated toner brayer, I'm now just spreading this ink around on the stamp. And now I'm just choosing a paper where I think that this might look good on. And it's really nice to work here on this Tim Holtz glass mat, that's the mixed media mat. And I'm also working on this craft sheet, because even though you might be scared that I'm ruining this craft sheet on the right side with the black ink on, actually it's super easy to get rid of this later on. So I thought, it works really nicely, as Tim Holtz actually explained in his tutorial, or he did this demonstration with Heidi Swap together. And the toner ink, he demonstrated that this will rub off like an erase board. So no worries here, I can clean all of this later on. And this is now the first impression. So you can see it's not perfect. However, I'm thinking when I only want to have some golden details here and there, and maybe I don't even use the whole image, maybe I just use certain parts of it, then this will still be fine. So this is not really a technique for perfection. So it's more for adding some kind of element that adds interest. So that's why if you're really concerned that you want the perfect image, then maybe this is not the right technique for you. However, if you just want some foil details to add this shine to your cards, then I think this is fantastic. So here I just do this now once again, and with any of these things, it just takes a little bit practice. So you have to figure out how little or how much toner you want to add on, because the toner also dries fairly quickly. So it's really, you have to put it on and then it's basically ready to go to stamp down, because otherwise the ink will be immediately dry on the stamp and then you won't get a good impression. So just practice with the same stamp maybe 2 or 3 times until you get a good feel for it, and then you can move on to the next stamps. And obviously there will be some stamps that you prefer maybe to others, and the best way is really if you have some kind of fill in the gaps stamps, as Tim Holtz would say. If you have some kind of texture or some kind of letters or calligraphy, and you can just add this all together, then it really doesn't matter if you have the perfect impression or not. So here you can see though that the second try that worked already a lot better. So here I just think I used a little bit more ink and probably rolled the brayer also a little bit more over the center. And I have the ink machine already turned on, so it's a little bit warm, and this way the toner just dries super quickly on it. So if you want to use toner or any kind of paste and you think, this is now a really long time that I have to wait for that to dry, then just place it on top of the ink machine, because this is warm and then it dries super fast. And with the toner, definitely you don't have to worry too much about this, because the toner did dry fairly fast for me at least. However, I'm in California, so pretty much everything dries immediately. So even when I used the paste later on, I kind of just started with the first stencil and used the paste, and by the time I was finished with all the projects that I wanted to do, the first paste was already dry and then I could already foil it. So that obviously depends a little bit on where you live. Maybe it takes a little bit longer that your toner or your paste will dry. So this is a perfect way that you have maybe lots of projects in mind. So you just line all your stamps up, and then you might have the same thing. So by the time you finished all your stamping, then the first image will be already dried, and then you can start the foiling. So as you can see here, I'm changing now the stamp into more of a textured look. So this is also a stamp set by Ciao Bella. And I just think once again, the more fractured the stamp looks already, and the less perfect it is, the better the result will be, because then you're not too concerned if it's like a true image or not. And I just think this whole process is a lot of fun, because you can try out all different stamps, all sorts of different paper, and the foiling you can do anytime. So you don't even have to think, oh, I only have an hour and I don't really want to play with all of this toner and trial and error and the foiling, and the machine has to be warm and all of that. So literally in the first round you can just concentrate on stamps and getting the toner right, and then once the toner is dry on all of those images, then you can just foil it anytime. So that's basically heat activated whenever you put it through the laminator machine, so you don't have to worry about that at all. And my thought process here was that sometimes you have beautiful paper pads that are almost too beautiful. So I sometimes think when you have images like this peacock here, for example, or what you see now here on the left side with the dragonfly and these flowers and butterflies, they almost look like a postcard, and sometimes I find this very difficult to use, because if I just stick now this beautiful image onto a card, did I really create a card? Because I basically just stick one piece of paper onto another piece of paper, but it's also too beautiful to cover it up with anything else. So I really struggled with this when, yeah, it already looks like a postcard and I don't really feel then like I've done anything creative. So with the foiling, that's a great thing, because now you can still add your own touch to it. And especially if you have different stamps, you could use maybe a nice calligraphy or great texture, and immediately, yeah, you just created something very unique. And of course, you don't have to use scrapbooking paper at all. So you can use a toner on any medium, so any paper will go. Here I'm now interested in the look on craft paper because I was wondering if that looks nice. And now, as promised, there's the cleanup section, and I'm just using a dry kitchen cloth, and it's super easy to erase all of this on this craft mat. So now I had to use a little bit more force because there was a bit more toner, but other than that, super easy clean up. Even the brayer, I just roll over the craft mat to get rid of all of this black toner ink, and once again I go over it with a kitchen towel and it comes all off. So no need to worry that this will stain your craft mat. And here you see now all the finished results, and it looks a little bit weird with the black toner on the paper, but of course this will be golden foil in a little bit. And yeah, so let's look at the next technique. Stencils and paste. So if you didn't like the idea with the toner and the stamps and you think that's all too messy, then of course you can also use your stencil. So here, for example, I'm using a new Minte stencil with these beautiful flowers, and I'm also using the paste by Heidi Swap for the Mink machine, which is called Foil Transfer Medium. And I really loved this paste because somehow it was super easy to apply to my stencils. It didn't slip under the stencil. It kind of just, yeah, was really smooth on top. And I thought the example here was immediately nice. So I didn't really have any trial and error. So that just worked every time again. And I love that the backgrounds here, you can either use as is, like a whole background with the stencil and the foil, or you can also just use parts of it. So you could just cut out certain areas, you can cut out strips and then just layer it all together onto your card. And you can see here the one example that I did on the left, how I placed this on the Mink machine. And this way, as I said before, it just dries faster. And of course, I also wanted to play with different papers. So now I also use the craft paper to see what that would look like with the stencil. And then you can experiment with any stencil that you have. So here I'm now using the stencils that we also got in for the Indigo line. So they had these beautiful, like leaves, and it looked very romantic. So I thought that would be really nice. And then also this one here with these interesting lines. I think it's called fluid art. And again, just gives you this interesting texture. And I think if you just try it on different paper and if you have different stencils, then you will not be disappointed with the looks, because even if there is one part of the whole foiling process that doesn't come out completely fine, then I think you can still cut out different areas and just layer it all together, and you will have a different look each time. So now let's talk about the foiling. And as I said before, you can foil anytime, so that really doesn't matter. If you have the toner on or the paste on, you can just foil whenever you want. And here I'm just taking pieces out that I cut before from a bigger roll, like a 12-inch roll. And I just thought it's more convenient, because I'm using the small Mink machine, that I have this already cut into the size that I can use here for the paper. And the foil itself, that's rose gold. And as you can see, my heating setting here is a 3. So that worked for me perfectly, because it wasn't too hot when I took the foil out to touch, because otherwise you have to wait a little bit so that you don't burn yourself. However, here you can see that I just wait a moment before I take it out, and I'm just getting organized here with all of the toner and all of this golden foil. And here is now the first example, how I just put this into this little laminating folder. I'm putting it through, and yeah, it doesn't take really long. And if you have many of these folders, then of course you can already prepare the next one, and then it's kind of like a mass production. So here it's this beautiful foiled image now. And with the negative of this process, that you can obviously use as well, so you don't have to throw anything away. So even you use the positive or the negative for your projects, and yeah, again, you just create different results each time. And I love all of these results here. I think with the toner that worked really nice because, as I said before, I wasn't really concerned about the perfect image because I already thought that I would probably just cut bits and pieces out. However, later we will also look at embossing folders, and there you can see that the toner ink was actually still visible. So there it didn't work 100%, but I will still show you how I was able to use all of those. And as you can see here, I'm starting now this mass production where I'm just putting the foil on the paper and then the paper into this folder, and then I just push it through, and the next and the next. And the folder that you see here is actually not one for the mini machine. This is actually a 12 by 12 folder that I just cut in half and then into the right size for this machine because I couldn't find the folders for this mini machine for some reason. So that would work as well if you wanted to start the same mass production. Just get one of those bigger 12 by 12 laminating folders by Mink, and then just cut it to the right size. And yeah, this way you don't have to sit there and wait until something goes through. You can just prepare the next one and then you're done within minutes. So that's pretty fun. And here now the finished results, and yeah, as you can see, the foiling came out pretty good. So if my toner wasn't applied correctly, then you can see that the foiling became fragmented. However, otherwise, all the foiling, really covered the whole toner ink, so there aren't any black marks. And especially here with the stencil paste, you will see now how much more dimension there is, obviously, in comparison to the stamps. So that obviously depends on you, which look you prefer. And there are also other crafters out there that say you have to somehow brush the foil first, so in case there is any lint or any little fluffy things on it. I didn't do any of that, and the outcome was okay. So I'm not sure if that's maybe due to the paper. It just foiled super easily. And here I'm now cutting all of those to size, just so that it's easier for me to visualize. Do I want to use it later as a background? Do I like the whole design? Or maybe do I just want to cut out maybe strips for a layered look? And all these leftovers, I will keep them too, because they always come in handy if I have to either layer more things on top, or maybe you need a strip for a sentiment and so on. So don't throw anything away at this point. So now let's talk about embossing folders. And as I mentioned before, there the technique was a little bit wonky, so to speak, because I thought it would be fun to try this out, as Tim Holtz mentioned this as well. And in the video he said he embossed the paper, but before he would actually ink up the inner side of the embossing folder. So it's the one where you don't have this raised bit, but where the flower is inside of the plastic. And so you can see here that I inked this up with different colors, and then I run it through my embossing machine. And this way you have the embossed paper, but also the color of it. So the inside is blue and the outside, so to speak, the flowers, they kind of stayed white. And later on, I will go now over the, this raised bit, so where it's still white, with the toner ink once again, because here you see now the process. So once again, I put the toner down, just as I did with the stamping, and I'm very lightly going over these raised areas. And it worked a little bit better with the Tim Holtz 3D embossing folders, just because there is more raised area. However, I also tried different ones where it wasn't anything 3D, it was just a normal embossing folder, and that worked as well. However, I'm not sure if I just applied too much ink here, or if it's just not as easy as to foil a stamp, just because you have now these raised bits and the foiling might not reach then the lower part of it. So you can see here with these letters, for example, it's very cool on the top where you have the raised part, but you also have some toner that's now in the lower part of this paper. and I don't think that the foil can really reach those areas. So probably I was a little bit too heavy-handed, and I should have gone just very lightly over the raised areas. And now I'm just cleaning the toner off my mat as I did before. However, here comes now a really cool fun fact. If you have anything ever on your craft mat that you cannot get rid of, because if you look closely here, there's actually some golden wax right now on this Tim Holtz craft mat, then use a little bit of this toner, because I have no idea how many things I tried before to clean off this wax from this craft mat and it just didn't come off. However, the toner, that really did the trick. So somehow it ripped off all of this wax, and yeah, now my craft mat was clean again. It was like magic. So I thought that's a little quick tip here. If you have anything on your craft mat that you just cannot get rid of, try to pour out a tiny bit of toner, and then that might do the trick. So here you see now once again my mass production on the foiling of these embossed papers. So the same process as before. However, I run out of the rose gold foil that I was using before by Heidi Swap and for the Mink machine. And now I'm using, I think it's called champagne. And yeah, so I have a little bit of a different look. And here I show you now what you can do with a negative. So I tried to spray a little bit of the Tim Holtz resist spray, and it was clogged, so I couldn't get it out in fine drops. So that's why I took a brush and I just smoothed out this resist spray on the paper, and this acts like a glue. So I could just put now this negative onto it, and then you have the image showing through with whatever paper you have behind. Yeah, kind of like a 2-for-1, and I like that you don't have to waste here anything. So you can use the original image, of course, the one that you foiled or stenciled, and you also have the negative. So once again, you can use it as a background, you can cut different pieces from it, so nothing goes to waste here. And here are now the finished results from the embossing. And as you can see, there are still some black areas, and that's just where the foil didn't reach these lower points. I think it worked really well on the high point, so that's more visible, but not so much on the lower ones. And now here's a trick how I would still think all of this was usable, even though it wasn't perfect, as it was still a little bit black in some areas. I just inked it. So just use whatever ink you like, and yeah, even though some images obviously had already some ink on it because we had the inked embossing folder, but then I just intensified this look, because if I once again just cut out certain areas, then there is no problem. I can just use whatever areas I like, and in these cases I cut circles out of it. And yeah, then it wasn't really a problem that there were some areas that were black. It was still fine in the end, and I could use all of them. So the next step is now fussy cutting. So I completed all my foiling, and now it was time to just look for different motifs here that I could use for the card, for some kind of ephemera. And I'm just looking through this fussy cutting pad still from the Indigo line, just to see some nice motifs. However, to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of fussy cutting. I feel that my hand, really tires quickly. And that's why you will only ever see me cutting really easy shapes. So I can do circles and squares, and that's about it. And in a little moment you will see how I can cut even more things, but not by hand, but actually with my brother's scan and cut. However, here now, like I said, I just use really easy motifs. And once I have all of those, the next step is that I will ink them up just to get rid of this white edge. So I like to have it a little bit more vintage. So now you see the brother scan and cut in action that I'm using. And it's very similar to a Cricut, if you ever heard of those, or maybe even have one of those. So you just stick this piece of paper that you've just seen, so this 6x6 indigo paper, onto this sticky mat, and then the machine can scan all of those images and then cut it out for you. And this way you have really easy cutting, because I mean sometimes the machine can mess it up a little bit when there is too much detail, because then it tries to cut out all of the detail rather than the shape. But here in this case, it was perfect. So you will see in a second here these frames that I inked up before. So on the left, that's with the Brother Scan and Cut, and on the right, that's the one I did. And I didn't do too bad, but I think the machine was better. So if you don't like fussy cutting, then maybe the Brother Scan and Cut is for you. And last but not least, even more embellishments, because I wanted to add even more golden pieces to the mixed media cards that I had in mind. And here I'm using Mintay chippies, I believe that's what they're called. So it's basically this chipboard that you see here. It's like this 12 by 12 sheet. And I had a little bit issues to just squeeze it out. So if I would just squeeze it, then I would actually break a lot of pieces because they're quite intricate in all of their detail. However, you see me now going around those little anchor points with my scissors, and then it came off quite easily. So in case you have these 12 by 12 chippies by Mintay, then carefully going around with scissors, that helps to get them all out. And in the next step, I just use some golden acrylic paint, just that they all become golden, and this way hopefully fit to the foil that I created before. And of course, you don't have to do any of those steps. However, if you love mixed media, then I think this way you can create great interest to any of your projects. And here we see now easy card number 1 and how I assemble it. And in this first example, I didn't even do any foiling, just so that you see you don't have to do it. However, I just find that it brings this motif a little bit more alive. And to add a little bit of interest, I just assembled here the dragonfly motif onto this gold metallic card base. As I said before, it's from this great package by Tim Holtz. And also here you see now why you shouldn't throw any of those strips away that you cut in the beginning, because sometimes it adds also more interest when you can assemble any sentiment onto one of those strips that is fitting to the paper. And now I just go around with stickles and some glossy accent to create even more shine onto those wings and also the body of the dragonfly. And here you see the finished card. Easy card number 2. So here is now just a quick example where I did some foiling onto this motif, and I think it just looks a little bit more elegant. And as I said before, you have this extra shine to this motif, so it's not just assembling a piece of paper onto another piece of paper. So I think once again, if you finish this off with this golden frame, then it looks really elegant and a simple but beautiful card. Easy card number 3, I will just show you once again how you can quickly assemble these motifs. And once again, if you don't want to waste all of this golden paper in the background, then have a look at my Duralove video where I'll show you tricks on how you get more use out of your paper. And I also love this wax by Sizzix, so I just added more golden wax around this motif, so just to make it even more shiny, and also added some rhinestones and a sentiment. And here we go, easy card number 3, and easy but beautiful. In easy card number 4, I just take it a step further. So I wanted to have more layers, so I started here with this foiled stencil that we did right in the beginning. That was this Mintay stencil. And this is now my background, and then I have a midground where it's just a paper that I cut from the indigo paper, and now my peacock is a foreground, and I just assembled once again golden paper behind the peacock so that it would stand out. And then I had to decide on a sentiment, so I also cut out different sentiments from the indigo paper, and then I just added some glitter and some rhinestone to finish the card off. And once again, really easy, but I just find that when you can add more layers, then it's just becoming more interesting. So if you love mixed media, then here I have more advanced cards for you, so to speak. So when I play with cards, then I'm not the biggest fan, as I said, to just cut one card base out and stick it onto the next. I want to have more embellishments, ephemera. I just love to play with all sorts of different techniques. And here you see now all of those round circles that I cut from the embossing folders where I wasn't happy because I had still some black on it from the ink. And here I just found now a good reason to use them because they all fit together in size with the ephemera that I cut either by hand or with the Brother Scan and Cut. And I also love to assemble random flowers. So I think these ones, they are flowers that I picked up in Michael's. And if you have just some kind of, yeah, different trinkets, like the Ideology line is great by Tim Holtz, or if you can pick up any little flowers from your hobby shop, or if you can cut out even more ephemera, or maybe you have these chippies as I mentioned before. So all of those things help to make your card more interesting. And you will see in a little bit, my most favorite embellishment is actually something that I found in Walmart, and it looks like gear pieces. However, they are just buttons. So sometimes even threads and buttons can make a really great embellishment. So yeah, just play around with anything that you have in your craft stash, and there's really no right or wrong here. So as long as you have an interesting background, a midground, and then foreground elements, then you will create an interesting result. So the foreground could be a bigger piece, or here I just thought it would be nice to have something on the top and then on the right bottom. And yeah, just play with it as you would treat a puzzle. So that's why I go through all of those steps in the beginning, that I create a lot of interests that I think that I might use. And maybe I don't even use everything. I mean, to be honest, I cut so many pieces that I still have a lot of things that I can use probably for 20 more cards. However, if you're prepared, then at least you have things where you can play with, rather than sitting in front of the paper pad and thinking, yeah, now what? So if you can prepare some foiling, some ephemera, some chippies, or some embellishments, then yeah, just have fun playing with all of those pieces. And I just think that's the most important part. You want to treat it like something that you enjoy and not like something that you have to do. So that's also here in mixed media card number 2. Once again, I just decided on some background. So here I have now this foiled dragonfly in the background. And then once again, I just had these circles that I cut out from the ephemera pieces that were in the paper pad. And then I just inked them to, yeah, not have a white border. And now you see actually these gears that I mentioned before. So these are from Walmart, and they're from the sewing department. So as I said, they're just buttons, and to make them more interesting, I often add some Sizzix wax, so then they're a little bit more golden. And now I'm just adding some thread, so that's just another popular mixed media technique where, yeah, it just adds more interest and a little bit more texture. And on top of that, I had this chippy that you've seen before, where I added the golden paint, and I love that because that's a feather, and I thought the feathers, they work really well with all of those hummingbirds and peacocks in the Indigo line. And then once again, I just play around with even more of those little gears. And the flowers that you've seen before from Michael's, and yeah, with some rhinestones and some glitter, I had another quick and easy result, but more of a mixed media look. So here comes now mixed media card number 3, and again, really simple to do. I just changed now the layout. So if you don't really like to do portrait mode, then here is now a horizontal card. And once again, I just assembled different layers. So I have this golden background, then I have some paper from the Indigo line, then I cut out more golden paper, then I assembled the hummingbird, and now I just wanted to play a little bit with the composition so that it's not just bullseye, but it's a little bit in an angle. And then I had a die cut. Here I have another gear, and then one of those pieces that the brother scan and cut out for me, one of those masks. And the mask I just finished off with some ink around the edges so that it's not white, and then some glitter, and yeah, a quick sentiment and another beautiful card. So here you can see now the card with the embossing folder layer, and why it wasn't such a big deal at the end that there was still some black ink, because I just wanted to use it as a background, and as Tim Holt says, a background is just a background, so you don't really have to worry too much about it. So it still adds a lot of interest, because now you can see a little bit of these foiled letters in the background, and then as a midground I have another foiled image that was one of those stencils. and then another foiled image of the indigo paper on top, and then I just finished this off with some rhinestones and a sentiment, and another easy to do card, but with a lot of interest on it. Card with leftovers. So here you will see now how you can play with all of those strips, where I said in the beginning, don't throw anything away. And this is why, because a lot of times it still looks really nice if you have different colored paper, but with the same gold on it. So it still has some kind of function that it fits all together. And here I just had a golden die cut that I love from Sizzix, and I just cut this out from the metallic paper by Tim Holtz once again, and then I just assembled my sentiment from the indigo paper. I added some gears and some flowers, and a quick and easy card made from all of your leftovers. And if you enjoy square cards better, then here I have a lot of examples for you as well. And you already know all of my processes, so I will just play some music and you sit back and relax, and hopefully this will inspire you for lots and lots of different cards. And here are all the finished results so that you get a better overview. And once again, here's a foiled piece where we just have the very simple version. Here's the embossing folder underneath. Then here again the simple version, no foiling, just some glitter. And then here we combined once again metallic foil and glitter and foiling. And here we have all the leftover card, and then we have some inspiration here with mixed media, with a gear button, and then some foiling underneath and the chippy in the golden paint. Here we have the foiled stencil underneath, and then here we have the horizontal version of this mixed media look. And then here you will see now the overview of all the square cuts, and again a little bit more mixed media look. I really enjoyed working with this corrugated paper as well. It just gives it once again a little bit more of dimension. However, of course, you can just play it simple or just experiment with all of those different layers like you see here. And yeah, there is once again no right or wrong, and I hope that all of those cards inspire you to either give foiling a try or maybe playing with this indigo paper, which is such a gorgeous paper, and really just take your time and lay out all of those things that you want to use, and then the inspiration will flow. So thanks for watching, and I see you next time.